Good morning. Good morning. It's Make It Happen Monday. So with those that you know, as we all know, we're here to help you explore what do you need to get success without stress by asking you questions, sharing stories and strategies. And today is no different, but today's subject is all about sleep, stress and success. I've been really privileged to be working with a lovely lady called Doris Leibold who will be joining us shortly, and we've been doing some research around where does good sleep come from. What does it take to actually be fully rested, restored and recharged, and what is the impact on your stress and success when you get good sleep. So without any further ado, please join me today for our discussion. We invite you to ask your own questions, share your comments as we interview and ask each other questions. But no further ado, let's bring Doris in.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning. So I have got the link here ready, so let me just pop that in the comments as well for everybody so they can see it. There is an event coming up that you're going to be making happen. We're going to be making happen, Doris. So without further ado, while we're waiting for people to come on live as well, just tell us a little about the event, what it is, why have you got involved with it, and what are you hoping for it?
Well, it's an event about a group experience or a group conversation about good sleep and what makes good sleep and what are sleep routines we have that help us and what stops us from experiencing good sleep.
And how did you get involved with it? Where's your curiosity in this subject come from?
I started exploring my own well-being last year. Well, I basically just tried out the question, so sleep for you is like what? With a few friends, and it turned out to be a really interesting conversation, and I got curious about my own sleep. I tend to have good night's sleep, but sometimes I don't. And then what are my strategies? I heard from other people and I got really curious about my own sleep habits and
so this event that we're putting on, we're going to be co-facilitating. I'm very excited.
Yes,
is in May. I'm just going to pop the link in the chat box so anybody that's on with us now, you can see that. And I can also just pop a banner up because we can put that there. I've got it ready, I think, here. Let's pop that on the bottom. So what's involved with this program? What's going to happen?
We'll be having 6 weeks of journey together with a group of between 6 and 12 people, I think. And we'll be just looking at different aspects of sleep. So we could be looking at sleep hygiene. We could be looking at going to bed, getting up, and then waking up in the night, and what are our experiences of that. And what do we need to be at our best for all of this?
And how long will it be lasting for? What can the people expect? Is it?
I think it's an hour and a half for each session.
Yeah.
Over a 6-week period.
Yeah. So I guess, so really, if you are listening in onto this program today, is just thinking, those of you know me, I'm the author of Manage Your Critic from Overwhelm to Clarity. It is really about listening to your narrative, about your story. How do you talk about it? And just thinking right now, what's your relationship with sleep like? Do you hold your own sleep in contempt? Or do you love your sleep, or do you get up and moan? It's been a real interesting thing for me, Doris, since we've started this program or started this research, is noticing that my husband complains about sleep all the time, like, oh, I haven't had enough, I just want to get more. And then I've been really listening to clients. As I had one client say to me that she she hates having to go to bed. It's like sleep's a waste of time, there's so much to do. So it's just really interesting, just once you put your attention on a subject like sleep, you start to hear just how differently we all experience it and think about it. So one of the things that's going to make this particular program very unique, which is different to what's out there, if you go on a sleep course, people are going to tell you a whole load of strategies and things you can do. So this session is going to be facilitated using a process called systemic modeling, which to me it's quite I don't know that it really sums up how gorgeous this process is. So for you as a participant,
sounds very technical, doesn't it?
It does sound very technical. It sounds very Yeah, it's nothing like my experience of it. You know, that's what. So I thought it'd be great for us today to think about when you're being coached in a group for 90 minutes, once a week for 6 weeks, using this process of systemic modeling. For you, Doris, that's like what?
I always have to think of the story of the king who sends out his wise men to find out what is an elephant. And they all come back and report something completely different, where you might think, really, is this the same thing they're talking about? And obviously, because they're all at different ends of that elephant, they have different experiences and report that. And so for me, it's a bit like that.
Yeah.
Just having a chance to hear other perspectives on the same thing.
So for those that haven't heard the story of the wise king and the elephants, can you just clarify a little bit more about what happens to these people?
It's an old wisdom story where, the king sends out his wise men. He wants to find out what is an elephant. They go and they touch different. One touches the legs, one the tail, and one the ears, and they all just have different experiences, and they come back and, well, as with all wisdom stories, you can make your own point about them, or you make your own meaning with it. But for me, it really is that reality has so many faces and so many aspects to it. None of us individually can grasp it on their own, and it's really enriching to share what others are seeing and hearing, because they might be completely different.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. We just got Suzanne who's joined us, who says she loves sleep, and I find that if I read before sleep, that stuff sinks in so much better, and that's a really lovely thing. And I know that if Doris and I were to be curious about which words we would be salient and we might be curious to ask about, I know that I'm personally thinking, when stuff sinks in, what kind of sinks is that? Sinks is I'm kind of drawn to find out a bit more about. What would you be drawn in to ask a question about, Suzanne? Sorry, Suzanne.
Yeah,
Doris.
the sink is kind of salient. Whereabouts does it sink to? Is, what I'd be curious about.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because that's one of the things that we've discovered because you've been running it as a pilot for 4 weeks with some of your own friends and colleagues, and we've been doing some interviews, and one of the sessions that has been quite impactful is modeling that going to sleep is like what, actually understanding that my metaphor is the drifting off or the switching off, and actually finding out how differently each one of us does that. What is it?
It's interesting. Let me just add, because some people will say they fall asleep, or you could say I'm out like a light. There's so many different words that people use to talk about this experience of no longer being conscious to the world, I guess.
Yeah, and Suzanne's talked about that sort of, obviously, the thing that you learn sinks in if you read it just before you go to bed. So there's also some benefits of things that you do just before you go to sleep, not just on the sleep itself, but it sounds like here as well on the learning. So what are the other sort of benefits or advantages or the impact of having these group coaching calls opposed to just sitting there thinking about sleep on your own?
So what I've noticed is that you get to a point where someone will come to a question for themselves. It's like, oh, that's interesting. I'm doing this or that. And then even though you hadn't considered this aspect before, you go, do I do that as well? I think I do. Or no, I don't. Oh, that's why. So for example, I've had one person in this program, she discovered, or she came to the question, I don't know, does my head bring my body to sleep, or is it the other way around? And we were all like, that's right. Someone has to take this body to sleep. But is it, it's kind of really opens up, just different questions that you may not have considered yourself.
Yeah.
Before.
And I think for me as well, I don't think that we get taught at school that to actually hear and understand ourselves, you can sit and think about it.
Yeah.
and you'll get some kind of insight. You could be asked questions, or you can ask yourself questions and you get some access to something. Clean language, if you're using it one-to-one, you get your words repeated back, so you get to hear your voice and your words and the questions externally, and that gives you another level of access to yourself.
Yeah.
And all of that is a process of getting to know yourself better. And when you can do that in a group that's held and facilitated, where everything that is presented is honoured without judgment, without criticism, without correction, that it is accepted as it is your experience, and no one's going to try and convince you should think anything differently, then for me there's an opening of yourself. You get access to a part of you that in everyday life, just because you're busy maybe, or a fear of being judged, or you just get access to parts of you that you couldn't get in an ordinary conversation, where someone might get excited and talk over you, or or tell you that can't be right, surely you must be doing this. And as you say, then when you get to hear how other people do it, I think it just seems that your system is more receptive to trying new things.
Yeah, it's not about the right and wrong, and where you say, oh no, I'm not like that, and I don't want that. But it's like, oh, actually, really? Is that their experience? I wonder. You just, start opening up, that you said, maybe.
I don't know if you can think about one for yourself, but I know for me, the one that really stands out is when we did that taster session as a ready for this. I'm going to come back to you, Suzanne, because I can't, but I'm loving the comments you've got there, and I will come back to you. But there was one of the the participants who said, good sleep for them was like when they go to sleep, they don't remember it, and they wake up. And I remember going, oh, God, that's my idea of the worst night's sleep, because I hate it if I go to bed and it seems like a nanosecond and I'm awake again. It's like I didn't get the sleep. Whereas other people's model was when there's no sensation, no stirring, no waking up, it's almost like they don't even know they've been to sleep. That was their sort of perfect best night. And it really fascinated me to think, oh my gosh, they're the ones I hate. They're the ones where I wake up thinking, oh, that went really quickly. And so it's just interesting to notice, and also just be curious about, well, that's probably why I'm quite accepting of getting up during the night, or I don't stress over it if I stir. I haven't got that frustration about it, because my sense is if it goes really quickly, it's like, oh, it's over and I've missed it kind of feeling. So what about, I'm going to come back to Suzanne a minute. And then I'd like to ask you, Doris, what's been sort of one of your sort of takeaways, learnings, or the experience you got? So, Suzanne, you've got here, I'm really interested in this conversation today. Sinkhole, kitchen sink, sinking ship, so many homonyms. I know you're a language person, Suzanne, and drifting off. And one of the things about clean language, which you may not know about, Suzanne, is we ask the question, that's like what? And then for some people they have it, not always, but sometimes there's a metaphor, and when you can get a metaphor for your experience, it can often help you really understand really complex systems and processes, and can get, if it's not a process that works for you, then you have the opportunity to tweak it or change it in the metaphor landscape. Great. And I think falling to sleep, it's an interesting word, isn't it, Doris? Because I just realised, I think they say that the only two fears we're born with is fear of falling and loud noises. So it's really interesting. If they're the two things that we're supposed to that's the only fears we're born with, and yet we talk about falling to sleep. It's just, well, that's where my mind's gone.
Yeah.
I'm just thinking.
It is interesting.
What happens? So what about you? What's been the impact of these discussions with yourself, Doris? What have you sort of taken away from them?
It's been like what you say, when you wake up in the night. I found out that if I don't stress about it and think, oh my God, am I going to be able to go back to sleep? This is the third time I've woken up now, and oh my God, I'm going to be tired tomorrow. Just start telling myself stories about it, and rather than doing that, kind of go, oh, interesting, I've woken up, and knowing that it is actually quite normal to wake up, and most times we don't remember, or we don't wake up enough to remember. And so that's kind of really settled me to treat waking up during the night just like a normal thing, and not get into conflict with myself or drama with myself.
Yeah, and that's where with the drama triangle, which obviously we use when we're looking at sort of conversations and relationships, etc., becomes really prevalent, because that was the thing that really stood out for me was I remember a time, I think when we very first started this research, I said to you, the very first week I started talking about sleep, I had really bad nights. I was exhausted. And I said, I remember the last time I thought about this is like, if I start thinking about sleep, then I become judgy of it.
Yeah.
And I start criticizing it and I become really critical of it. And then actually I've realized it's the criticism of it and the judging of it that makes me really tired. Whereas when there's that level of curiosity and there's some acceptance, it had a really positive impact. And I remember one of the ladies, like we interviewed for her, she was someone that says, I have really good sleep. And when we modelled her sleep, when she's really good sleep, she was actually doing exactly the same behaviour of somebody who said they had really bad sleep. Like she would wake up in the middle of the night and decide she wants to do something and go and work for 2 hours, and then she might not go back to bed. But she just didn't hold her sleep patterns in contempt. She wasn't stressed that it happened. And that has been one of the things I've seen with my group that we did it, the pilot we did it, they've gone on to say, actually that's been the biggest thing is not, somebody said, oh, well, I had a rule that I had to get 8 hours sleep. So if I used to wake up, I used to think, oh my God, I'm not going to get 8 hours now, so I'm going to be tired tomorrow. And it was like, well, where did the 8 hours come from? Is that mine or somebody else gave me that? It's like, they're the things that have been really, really interesting to notice.
Yeah. And something else that I found curious or was really interested in is metaphors for bad sleep. Or in that group that I had for 4 weeks, there were some really, really violent and unpleasant metaphors for bad sleep. And we all went out and kind of interviewed other people and asked them, so what's your bad sleep like? And also found that people who say that they are good sleepers tend to just have, not pleasant, obviously, but a lot less harsh and violent metaphors for bad sleep. So it's also made me think, okay, how can I have a kind and loving relationship with my bad sleep?
Yeah. And that, I remember the lady that we interviewed about this sort of good sleep pattern, when we said to her, and when it's bad sleep, that's like what? She was like, I don't have a model for that. There is no model. Sleep is sleep. It's like there isn't, is that acceptance. And I think it's just interesting because you could put, we've talked about this title being sleep, stress and success. I think the other thing is, it's that chicken and egg, what comes first. I think what's been interesting is just helping people to unpack and understand what happens just before good sleep. And when you've got good sleep, then what happens? Because for some people, like what we're hearing is if they're stressed, that will impact their sleep. But if they haven't had sleep, they'll become stressed.
Yeah.
And so it's actually working out what's the source of stress. And where's that coming from? And so it's been really interesting watching it as an overall process, actually as a cyclical thing, obviously, because hopefully we go to bed most days and get to sleep most days. But yeah, it's been really interesting just noticing how there's some of the life-changing decisions people are making as a result, that realising sleep is really important. And actually something that's been happening during the day for, in some cases years, has really impacted them. And therefore it's made them consciously aware that something has to change in order for sleep to improve. So just checking with Suzanne, she's got so interesting, sleeping like a baby and the total innocence, I think, is without any of the outside influence where fear or judgment is concerned. Yeah, and it obviously, because we've become a fast-paced world, and we're now in the age of information, and somebody used a term the other day, the economy of attention, where there's so much vying for your attention. You've got access to huge amounts of data and models of what should or could be good sleep. In fact, I've got a lady who is coming on the show to be interviewed in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. I just won't secure the date. But she runs a program called Sleep Hygiene, and it'd be really interesting to hear from her, what's her guidance? What does she talk to people about? She works in the corporate arena on sleep hygiene. And it'd be really interesting to find out what her models are. But I think we're just lacking time to sit and actually listen to what our own models are. Actually, before you get influenced by everybody else is, what's it like for you now? And if you like the idea of somebody else's, you have to still know what yours is like in order to move yourself from where you are now to where you'd like it to be. And I think people often don't have the space to listen to themselves, and that's what I love about this process.
Absolutely.
So is there any other impact that because you've obviously run the 4-week pilot, what's been the sort of the impact and the biggest takeaway so far of talking about sleep?
I'll tell you another aspect that I was not really consciously aware of is that when do you go to sleep? When do you start going to sleep? That's been really interesting. We've had everything from 6 hours before I go to bed to half an hour to I'm sure there's a huge variety in the length of when do you start going to bed. And that's made me, again, just more aware of my own conscious decisions around when do I go to bed, when do I get ready for bed, when do I start switching off from the day and say enough, it's been enough, you've done enough, you can start winding down. Another metaphor there, winding down and switching off, isn't there? And I think that's just it's brought so much around this topic to conscious awareness, where I feel I can do something with it in a way that serves me well. Yeah.
And I was so busy listening to you, there was another thought I wanted to share, and when you just lose it straight away, I was like, I'm gonna give myself a second to see if it'll come back, because it's to do with sort of in terms of sort of success and stress. It's only through this process I've realized that I wasn't very good at listening to my body. So I'm really interested now. That'll be another conversation you and I have to have about the head, the body, and whatever. So I can't wait for this 6-week course. It's going to be so exciting to find out what emerges. But I realised that part of the reason why I overate was because I didn't actually know how to listen to my body. From a very young age, I'd sort of like attention had been put on my body from a sort of it's not the right shape, etc. So it's almost like I'd shut it off. And it's only in recent years I've realised that I didn't actually know how to listen for the signs. And you just said about that pushing through. I think that's really interesting, because I know when I look with clients with their motivated action models, there's the time when you've got to push through the discomfort to get, because change is uncomfortable, but you can get in the habit of keep pushing and forget to listen to your system and actually say, I'm tired. And one of the things that definitely came out from the good sleep models that I looked at, they when they knew they were tired, they acted on it. They did something about it, rather than continually and consistently ignoring the fact that they are tired. When they were tired, and I just thought, actually, there's another way. It's like, where do you sleep? So this one person said they never sleep anywhere other than their bed.
Not on the sofa or
don't fall asleep
else.
on the sofa. Don't fall asleep. If they're tired, they go to bed. And that's what they do. And so I just think, so that's another one that I didn't even think of. We might have to run a second program. I don't know we're going to get it all in 6 weeks, but it's like what position are you in when you sleep at your best? Are you lying down? Are you sitting up?
The whole sleep environment. I mean, how dark do you need it? What is too dark, maybe, to feel safe, and what is too bright? That can have a huge impact.
Yeah, and I was reading and I can't remember what it is. I should have saved it and sent it to you. There was a thing about whether you have the door open or not.
Oh, right. Okay. I remember I always wanted to have the door open as a child when my
I can't sleep with my door open, and so that's a really interesting. So when you talk about sort of metaphors, that brings up a whole load of when the door's shut, I feel safe. And other people, the door needs to be open.
Yeah, that is really interesting.
So it's like, you know, those are the environments and the conditions. And I just think it's so fascinating to go, actually, what's the impact of these? And then what works about it, what doesn't work, what could work better, which is what we're going to be able to do for 6 weeks. So just so as we wrap up today, because we are coming up to the 25-minute mark, it's on May the 17th. It's the first session. It's on a Tuesday afternoon. We'll be meeting for 90 minutes for 6 weeks. If you are somebody who would like to be able to achieve success without stress, and you're interested in more of these kinds of conversations that Doris and I've had today about sleep, then please do check that show out, and that show program. This is the show, and get in touch with us. As I say, the link is below. And I'd like to thank Suzanne today for joining us today. Your last comment is, I did hear about a sleep model where people just sleep when they are tired through 24 hours, so not simply go to sleep at night time. That, oh my gosh, see, that's a great example. You know, it's like, only go to bed when you're tired, not just because it's time to go to bed. That would be and I can see actually how that applies to my model with food. It's like, don't just eat because it's
only
dinner
eat
time.
when you're hungry.
Only eat when you're hungry. Well, that's okay if you know how to listen for being hungry. Because what happens if I don't do it at a certain time? What happens is I suddenly realise I'm starving, and I wonder if there's a synergy with that with sleep. Is if you don't know how to listen for your system, so if you don't do it, you do it on a routine because you don't know how to tune in and actually listen to your system. So therefore you then get past it. That's another metaphor, isn't it? Where you get overtired and then you can't go to sleep at all because you're exhausted.
And can I just add, because it's been life-changing really to be able to differentiate between the kinds of tiredness that I can experience. There's a natural tiredness, and there's tiredness from maybe a physical activity or mental exertion. And being able to distinguish has just been, life-changing, really.
Yeah. And I guess that comes down to what Suzanne's saying there, is that sometimes you just might need a change of activity to be rested, to restore and recharge. And sometimes you might need to physically sleep. So your body might need rest, or your head might need some rest, but the whole of you may not need to sleep.
Correct.
That is really interesting. It's a great point to finish on, as Suzanne's got. Food, a whole other edition. Yes, I'm sure we will be doing a Structures for Living. There is one being done by Pascal, who are running it on fasting, and the fasting for health. So there's lots of synergy in between all of these today as well. So without any further ado, a massive thank you, Doris, for joining us today on this sweet show. And for those of you, I'm talking about time next week. So which is probably quite lined up with the 24 hours thing. How much sleep is enough sleep? We'll be talking all next week about time. But without any further ado, I'm going to love you and leave you today, because I know that you are busy people with limited amount of time. So thank you again, Doris, for joining us today.
Thank you, Cheryl. It's been a pleasure.
You're welcome. And I've got to get back to the thing, and I've not got the right screen up. So without any further ado, have an amazing week. Now that you've had the chance to listen to us, the opportunity is for you to just take a moment and think, now that you know what you know, what would you like to have happen? Having listened to Doris and I today, and the lovely Suzanne who joined in actively with us today, given what you've been listening to, what would you like to have happen? Those who know that watch the show, it's all great listening to other people, but it's really important that you take a moment to listen to yourself. What would you like to have happen? For that to happen, how do you need to be? What kind of you is that you? And then take a moment and think about, what kind of resource or support might you need for you to be like that and for that to happen? And you know what? Sometimes all we need is a really good listener. So if you've got any, success without stress is possible if you can just learn to listen to yourself. But sometimes you need a little bit of help and assistance to get access to all of that gorgeous wisdom that's within you. Have an amazing week, and I'll see you next week.